It's an interesting tree that's called Papia capensis, or the jacket plum. And it's most interesting, of course, to someone like me, David, well, not to someone like you, of course, because apparently its leaves are good for treating baldness. I have yet to find any truth to that rumor. Now she's moved on to something called the blackthorn, or black monkey thorn, sorry, Acacia burkii. I'm just going to have to talk to Andrew on the radio at the moment. Go. Negative, I called in that I left them about 10 minutes ago. The animals are between Central Road and the drainage line. There's a pan in there quite close to the concrete crossing. They're in the middle there. Just follow the tracks off Central. Isn't that a lovely picture? Completely peaceful. Sunday peace. I actually think that's a knobthorn tree. I don't think it is a black monkey thorn. No, it is a black monkey thorn. Don't worry, David. I know you were suspicious that I got it wrong, but I didn't. Don't worry. I know that your heart was beating with a deep sense of fear that I had lied to our audience, but I have not. Now, there are probably about 10 or so elephants lurking through the bushes here. You can hardly hear them at all. Lauren, I really enjoy your question because I think my answer to it is unusual. I'm not sure how interesting it is, but it's unusual. You say, what made me want to become a safari guide? Thank you, David. David's supposed to go...
I did.
But I didn't hear him. He's supposed to give me a little clicking sound when he turns the camera to me, so that when it comes to round, I look you in the eye magically. Anyway, we'll try it again. David, go back to the elephants right now. There we go. That's how it's supposed to work. Lauren, you say, how did I become a safari guide? Lauren, I was going to try and become a guitarist at one stage of my life. I was going to become a professional musician. I did study biology, and then I decided that I should probably go back and play the guitar. Unfortunately, well, very fortunately actually, I had a girlfriend of whom I was terrified, and she said we were going to the bush. So I said, okay, yes, let's go to the bush. And I said, what are we going to do there? And she said, we're going to be game rangers. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't know what a game ranger did. I thought maybe they counted grass or animals or something like that. And a little while after that, I found myself on a 6-week training course at Phinda Game Reserve, which is down in the north coast of Natal. And I was in a drainage line in the year 2000 during the floods, so there was a lot of water. And I was on watch. I found myself on watch, solely responsible for the lives of 20 complete strangers, also on the training course, and a lion roared in the distance. I only just managed to recognize it as a lion because I'd never heard a lion roar before, and I was convinced that it was going to come and kill me and all the people that I was responsible for. And that was my first kind of proper bush experience. And slowly I became completely enamored with it, and I just carried on. Thankfully, the lady and I split up after the trainers decided that she didn't really have the personality to look after high-paying international travelers, and so she moved on and I stayed. That's how I became one. The one thing is, though, I've always, from my teenage years, in fact from before that, we used to go to the Drakensbergers family. And I've always been completely convinced that I needed to live in a beautiful area, somewhere touched by the wilderness, since I was in the mountains as a young child. And from that point on, I knew that I needed to live in a beautiful area. So for me, yes, having the animals around is absolutely magnificent. But the fact that I am able to wake up and not hear the traffic, and get out, sort of roll to the Land Rover, which is my office every day, is a pleasure that I can barely believe I've managed to, or been lucky enough to get as a job. And so I live in a beautiful area, and that was my sole career ambition actually when I left school some 22 years ago, David. And that, Lauren, in a long-winded way, is how you and I came to meet where we are now. Many lessons in that story, David, for a young man like yourself. You know, don't always be afraid of women. Sometimes they can lead you in the right way, in the right path for your life. Perhaps the other lesson is that you should always do what a woman tells you to do. Charles, yes and no. Moving on from my personal story of, well, I suppose relationship trials and into the wilderness, which tends to sort out all kind of truths you're trying to figure out anyway. Charles, you say, is it true that when elephants are trying to tell truths to each other, that they do so with vibrations that they send through the ground? Not normally, Charles. They do send vibrations through the ground, apparently. They call it tectonic communication, which is a rather fancy term for, apparently, when they stamp, apparently, that it can be perceived by other elephants for up to, I think it's 20 kilometers or so, that's about 12 miles in the distance. And so long-range communication, in much the same way as sort of signaling from hilltop to hilltop, elephants are able to talk to each other over vast distances. And certainly when they used to do the culling in the Kruger Park, so up to 1996, they used to take out about 900 elephants a year from the Kruger National Park population. Elephants, they were culling in the south of the park, elephants in the north used to be extremely nervous and extremely distressed. There's definitely some kind of long-range communication that takes place. But I think you'll find that most of the communication is rumbles, which I suppose you could describe as vibrations, because all sound is a vibration. But it's a low-frequency rumble that's made in the larynx, in the voice box, and that goes between the elephants in an area like this. And we don't, of course, we don't hear half of what goes on because we simply do not have the ears to be able to pick up the low frequency that these animals produce. It's a nice question. Thank you for that. Tectonic communication. Oh dear. Oh well. David, you didn't click there, did you? Click. David's throwing me down the river here, everybody. Alright, we're going to try and see these elephant that broke this tree. While we do that, Taylor, not elephant, Taylor has something that is much more gentle with the trees.
You can see a giraffe moving around in the background. Hello, mister. And he's quite an old boy. And one of my favorite things to point out on giraffe, of course, is to see how old they are, is all the calcification that you see on their heads. Now, you can see he's got lots of lumps and bumps. Now, that is perfectly normal. Well, I think we're going to have to try and keep up with him. So let's move forward and see if we can get another view before I explain what I'm about to explain. And we've been seeing lots of young male giraffe lately. And we've been looking at how beautiful they still are, their long, lovely eyelashes, their smooth skin. And of course, well, this chap, I think he's seen a couple of battles in his life, but I will show you why in just a moment. Let's get a little bit further ahead of him so we don't get lost behind him. And we go up one more. Here we go. He's a funny looking giraffe. Now look at that head of his. You see how there's bits of those calcifications that are almost exposed now. The hair has been rubbed off. And that's how you can tell that he's seen a couple of battles before. He's obviously been necking. This is not obviously fresh sort of injuries. These are quite old, so probably a few months ago, where he was battling it out and I suspect that it was probably a serious battle for some females. But isn't that amazing? And that's very important. I like to emphasize the calcification on the face, because it's basically like adding extra padding, really. So it's like wearing a helmet, or it's like putting knee pads and shin pads on, and that helps protect the head. Isn't that amazing? He's lovely and dark. I mean, I don't really need to point that out. You can see how beautiful he really is. But he's not particularly tall. And look at all the ticks that you can see on his body. He's got quite a few ticks. You need a couple of oxpeckers. Sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Thank you. Louise is saying bless you 100 times now in my ear. But the oxpecker that this giraffe looks like he needs, though, is the yellow-billed oxpecker. Now, Brianne, you're wondering if giraffe are often preyed upon. You're very much correct in saying that, especially by the lions. Now, a big, beautiful giraffe like this, though, he's got a good chance, though, possibly outwitting some lions, especially in this area. And a technique that I've seen the Kruger lions doing, I've watched a couple of documentaries on them, is that they take, or if they find giraffe around the sort of granite boulders, the rocky areas, the lions will chase the giraffe onto those surfaces that are not flat. And when you're that tall, it makes it quite difficult to sort of balance when you're running at a high speed over an unleveled area. And it's a very clever strategy by those lions. And it's this one pride, I've forgotten the name of the pride, that are sort of specialist hunters in the Kruger of giraffe. And that giraffe, unfortunately, will lose its footing and fall. And once that giraffe falls over, it is almost guaranteed that those lions will be able to bring it down. Because as soon as they sit on that giraffe's neck, that giraffe is not getting up again. And it's very sad, of course. But if you have a pride of 40 lions, you can imagine buffalo really just doesn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, they need to catch 3 or 4 buffalo to sort of fill their appetite. But a giraffe, however, they would feed on that easily for a couple of days. Remember, the giraffe weighs at almost 1.2 tons, especially a nice big boy like this. And there's plenty of flesh for the lions to feed on. So they don't seem to hunt too many elephants in this area. That seems to happen when you go up towards Namibia and Zimbabwe. Now, speaking about the ticks that we saw all over this giraffe, we see them on the side of its body towards its rump. It's disappearing now, but I'm sure you saw that. Now, Lord Gifferon, you were saying, or asking, if there are any animals that can die of tick infestations. Now, the ticks, of course, will do serious damage, like the mange, when the immune system is lowered. So if that animal's not feeling particularly well, a little bit down under the weather, then yes, an infestation of ticks could then probably kill an animal. And I saw it quite often down in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And I talk about the Eastern Cape quite a lot, but that's where I'm from. Sort of a similar area where James is from. And they tried to introduce springbuck. And again, I think I've mentioned the story. And springbuck should never have ever occurred down there. Firstly, because the biome that it's in, the thicket biome, the Albany thicket biome, is evergreen. So it's made up of small evergreen shrubs with a couple of tree components. And I think there's probably about 6 different species of trees that we get down in the Eastern Cape. Not very many like we get up here. And it's very thick, lots of mountains and valleys and rivers. So there's a lot of water around. Now, springbuck, of course, prefer the harsher environments, the arid regions like the Kalahari, like the Namibia, the Sahara, all those areas. They prefer those big salt pans. And you can imagine, when you're living in a dry area where there isn't a lot of vegetation around, the tick populations aren't nearly as high as what they would be even in an area like we're in at the moment with all the vegetation. So they're probably not used to the amount of ticks, and well, they seem to have died I suppose, something quite similar to a Lyme's disease. We call it biliary, and they can get that. Unfortunately, that would knock the populations of springbuck within a year. Remember, we introduced about 50 down to a new section of the reserve, and they didn't last. There were a couple that had lambs, but unfortunately the lambs would never make it to adulthood, which was very sad. So yes, they can, but up here they're very well adapted. They've got things like oxpeckers to help remove the ticks. But those big ticks that we saw, they're not going to be removed, unfortunately, by the red-billed oxpecker, which is the one that we see on a regular basis. And this is where the yellow-billed oxpecker is so important. And I hope that we start to see more and more of those populations in this area. It's because they feed on those beautiful, big, juicy ticks. Well, as beautiful as a tick could be, I suppose. It was a strange word to use to describe that tick. But they will actually eat those, whereas the red-billed oxpeckers sort of do a scissoring motion with their beak through the hair of the animal and will pick out those finer ticks, which are also bad. So the pepper ticks, which are tiny. I think I've described them and said they're the size of a pinhead. Now, RT, you're wondering what the difference between those two oxpeckers that we were just chatting about are. Well, let's get the book. Let's have a look. Let's find where oxpeckers are in my book. There's O. Here we go, 404. Oh, that's quite far at the back. We'll get that and we'll actually have a look so I can show you. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you, though, before I even get this out, is that the yellow-billed oxpecker is larger than the red-billed. Here we go. Let's see if we can get it to stay open. Thanks, Mr. Giraffe, and hope you enjoy your breakfast. So you have a look at the bottom of the page. You can see both species, yellow on the left, red-billed on the right. Now, like I said, the yellow-billed oxpecker, you can clearly see the difference with the beak. It's got that big yellow patch at the base. And you see how it also lacks the yellow eye ring, unlike the red-billed oxpecker. So those are two very easy things to spot. But now another thing is that the yellow-billed oxpecker is much larger than the red-billed oxpecker. So in terms of height, quite similar. Red-billed oxpecker is only about 19 centimeters, whereas the yellow-billed, I'm going to pull this away very quickly. There's just another vehicle, so I need to just pull off the road, but I'll keep talking. You sort of got the gist of it, though. Let's go back very quickly. We're just going to move away. I'm going to reverse. Sorry, poor Aubrey, I'm blocking him in all the time, so we'll just, that's a big bump. We'll just go around here. Bye, Aubrey. Sorry. We won't block him anymore. And even the sort of the robustness of, I don't know if that's a word either, I'm just making up things today, of a yellow-billed oxpecker is just their whole sort of physique about them is much larger. So when you're seeing them on the buffaloes, so typically you'll see them on the herds of buffalo, and those big herds that we see coming through in the winter months, is you keep an eye out at the back of the herds. And I don't know why it is that we always see the yellow-billed oxpeckers coming in from sort of right at the back, whereas the red-billed oxpeckers are just everywhere on the buffalo, in the front, in the middle, on the back. And their call is quite different too. Like I said, just look for the size, but I'm going to play the calls for you. We're going to just stop up over here. I want to get to a point where I can pull off in case Aubrey wants to come past again. Right, we'll stop right in the middle of this little triangle. And I want you to listen to the calls because they're quite interesting. They're fairly similar. We'll just have to turn the volume on and then we'll get to the lovely bird app, field guide. Let's go. Where is O? Oh, oxpeckers. Now we'll play the red-billed oxpecker first because you know that call so well. Are you all listening? You hear that? Now take note of the tone. Quite sort of raspy, but let's now listen to the yellow-billed. See how much higher pitched it is. Incredible. Right. So you heard those differences now. Much higher pitched, the yellow oxpecker, the yellow-billed oxpecker, and the red-billed oxpecker, a deeper, raspier tone. So that's something you can also keep an ear out for, is when those big herds of buffalo come through. But that's something we'll keep an eye out for. I'm always looking, of course, for them. But now that the herds of buffalo have unfortunately split up, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But there we go, oxpeckers and giraffe. I think we covered that quite well this morning. But we're going to go back across to James, though, and see how his morning is going.
Well, my morning is going fine, everybody, but that hippopotamus is making me feel very sleepy indeed. They are very, very tired hippopotamus after a night of grazing. They don't like to overextend themselves too much. They find it very trying. That one is now awake and deeply insulted that I have cast aspersions on his sort of laziness. But then he's overcome his insult and he's now starting to close his eyes again. Now we think this is old Bob, the bachelor of Biffleshoek. But of course, and don't tell Gracie this, everyone, this could be an entirely different hippopotamus. And this water's starting to dry again. It's interesting. It doesn't take long for the water in Biffleshoek to dry out. So that's a 2.5 ton animal lying in what is essentially probably only, I'd say, about 3 feet of water, absolutely maximum where he is there. You like my mixing of the metric and imperial systems there, David? Yes, I quite liked it myself. Let's go and look here, because I think there is a... Oh, it's a beefy. I don't think... Wait, hang on a sec. Let's go this way. I think this beefy is going to come up through the game path, down to the water's edge, where it will remain for the rest of the day, hoping that the Nkahuma pride does not come along to eat it. We'll try and get you a view of this beefy. I'm surprised we haven't seen more beefies today. No, this beefy does not want to be seen, I'm afraid. Sorry, everybody. There is a buffalo in there, in some very thick bush, but let's carry on. So that's Biffleshoek Dam. Nothing else going on here. So we're going to go around onto the southern boundary and just head along that way. Aubrey reckons that he's got tracks of Karula coming back into Djuma. So that's very good news indeed. You might be lucky there. Otherwise, we'll see what else we can see. You'll see that I put my jersey on because it's got a little nippy. So many years ago, where I was terrified of both my girlfriend, of course, and the animals that were going to come and eat us. AJ, I don't think that technology has actually influenced guiding much, but for the amount of research that we're able to do and the amount of research that, of course, our guests are able to do. So back in 2000, I think Wikipedia was a thing that was very new, and the amount of information on the interweb about wildlife and that sort of thing was relatively limited compared with what it is now in 2016. And that means that when you take a safari now, you have an audience that is infinitely more or better informed than it was. And so the guides have to be that much more clued up, and they have to be that much more aware of what their guests know. Now, of course, with you guys who are watching, you've got information at your fingertips all the time. So we have to be extremely careful about telling pork pies to you, because we will definitely be caught out. So that's definitely changed the way guiding operates. But in terms of how you guide and the techniques that go with it, I've got to tell you, it doesn't change a great deal. The same key principles apply. One of which, David, is the moment of discovery. There is a Steenbok there. And there it is, 2 Steenbok. So just while we stop it here, looking at the Steenbok, one of the things that you teach a new guide is about this thing called the moment of discovery, where you know, and I know, and everybody else who's been watching this show knows, you can drive up to that Nkuhuma Pride, virtually park on top of them, and they won't bat an eyelid at you. But if you're a guest and you've just come out here, and this is your first African holiday, and maybe you've saved up here to be here all your lives, and you've come out to Africa, a moment of discovery would be a moment like this, where you spot the lions way in the distance, and you know, of course, that you can park right next to them, but you stop and you set the scene so that people can absorb what they're seeing for the first time, a wild lion, or in this case, a extremely wild Steenbok through the bushes. And then you'd move in closer. Now that sort of thing, that the linking of a sort of safari narrative during a drive, the using of books and visual aids, I suppose. I mean, if you can use an iPad now instead of a book, but it's the same thing. It's showing people birds. It's pointing out the calls. It's trying to get people to appreciate the infusion of the wilderness into their being during a guided experience. It's finding the small things and telling the stories. That stuff has been happening since our ancient Neanderthal ancestors were sitting around the fire telling stories to each other, and that has not changed. That essence of a wilderness experience, I don't believe will ever change as a result of technology. Nice question. Thank you for that, AJ. There's the Steenbok mum, and she's got a little lamb. Leilani, you want to know what my favourite part of being on safari has been? I think while I've been, we very kindly said, educating you. Well, for me, it's the same reason that I came out here in the first place. It's the joy of being out here, and hopefully transferring some of my sense of wonder and my sense of peace and my sense of I guess, soul healing, if you like, that the wilderness gives me. So for me, the most exciting part is trying to give that and transfer that across to you. The smells, the sights, the sounds, the different seasons, all the complexity that goes with living in a wilderness area. That Steenbok don't look so fly. It's not in a very good way. Also looking a bit hippie. Now, Dave, if you just swing the camera slowly to the right-hand side, you'll see that Steenbok use little lamb. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? That is a little lamb. Well, it's not that little. It's probably, I've no idea how to age a Steenbok, but I would say that's probably about a month or two old. No, it must be bigger than that. Must be about 5 months old, because it's about 2/3 the size of its mother, which is standing, what we call another Afrikaans. I sometimes use Afrikaans expressions because they're quite cool. Stock still, which means basically it's standing as still as a stone, as still as a stick. And that is what a Steenbok does, of course, unless it's running away into the bush and then stopping. So just to quickly get back to Leilani's question, yes, it's a joy to bring you the Nkuhumas and Tingana and Karula and the cubs, and to share in your very obvious joy at seeing those animals. But for me, being out here, well, it's just so nice to be able to wake up and be here every single day.
We're just coming back around past quarantine again. We're going to head towards the dam and cross the wall. And I believe we've had a request from James to head to the Magpie Shrike Nest. So that's where we're going, is straight to Hyena Road. And we'll head around there. But we'll do a bumble. We won't race on over. We'll see what else we can see. Perhaps we'll go maybe around Mvubu Road, and then we'll go along one of the fire breaks, and then we'll come back down Hyena Road. Maybe we'll have a look at Buffelshoek Dam. I think let's go also check Buffelshoek Dam and see if there's any interesting birds around. Oh, only, okay. Well, we're going past you very quickly. But that's what I'm thinking of so far. I haven't quite decided what else we're going to do. I think we're just going to take it as it comes and see what it jumps out at us. I'm really excited for the flowers to come through, but I think I'm going to be a bit disappointed even after this bouts of rain that we had almost a week ago now. I thought that would have been enough to send the flowers pushing through the ground, but obviously not, because there's so many beautiful ones that we're going to see when we have enough rain. Right, so maybe we'll take a different tour. I'm changing my mind again, of course. There's lots of vehicles all around us, and they all seem to be stopped looking at maybe birds and things, so I don't want to drive and disturb them. So we'll go this way. I saw one of the guides in the dip on the other side of the wall, so I don't want to have to chase them around and sort of have a standoff. But we'll just change our route again. And this is what happens in safari. It's actually difficult to have a plan, because often that changes quite regularly. So maybe we'll go down one of my favorite roads. We'll go down Vulture's Nest, but before, look at this Egyptian goose. Now there's a beautiful Egyptian goose that's posing so nicely on this dead tree. Hello, Egyptian goose. And I suspect that it's one of the two that we see on a regular basis that sit at the dam. Now, I don't know if this is Mrs. or Mr. It's quite difficult to tell when they're not standing together, because the male is much larger than the female, and the colors are very much similar. Now, Lauren, I believe that you would like to know this morning what got me into becoming a guide. Now, I was very fortunate, as the holiday that I did as a kid was safari holiday, so we would go to the Kruger National Park at least once a year, normally during our summer Christmas holidays for about 2 weeks. But then we also used to go to a variety of private smaller game reserves within the Eastern Cape of South Africa, and we do that a couple of times a year. So naturally I just absolutely loved the bush. I was always outside. Very rarely did I come inside. The only time I think I was actually allowed inside was when it was raining, and otherwise my parents would boot me out all the time, and that was okay. I played with the chickens. I made friends with all the insects, and of course I had lots of dogs growing up, so I used to run around like a hooligan with them, stirring them up through the water on the trampolines. And then when it came to sort of choosing a career, I really wanted to study equine dentistry, which is to be a horse dentist, because I rode horses, and I thought that there's a serious need of the specialist qualification. And here in South Africa, you can't study to be an equine dentist. You have to go to one of the 4 places in the world, so either Australia, the UK, Germany, or in the States, you can study to be an equine dentist. And because I'm an Australian citizen, I thought that would be perfect. I could go back there and study. And then I got the opportunity to join the bush. I forgot how much I loved being outdoors, and I hadn't quite realized how much I enjoyed working with people. So I went off and I threw the idea of becoming an equine dentist away, and I went and studied to be a ranger. So I went to one of these training schools and started off, and then I ended up getting a job just down the road at a beautiful reserve, and I worked there for 3 years. Almost just shy of 3 years, a couple of months shy of 3 years. And then I didn't leave. I just said to my dad, I said, Dad, it'll just be for a couple of years. I'll just make some money and I will gain some life experience, because I was obviously very young at 19. And well, I'm still here at 24. I haven't left, and I have no desire to leave, of course. Hello, Egyptian goose. And it's just an incredible career. And like I said, I really learned how much I enjoyed being with people, being outdoors, and of course the most important thing, educating. And well, now we're doing something a little bit different too, but it's so wonderful. This is probably the best job in the world. It's not for everybody. When you're guiding, you work really long hours, and unfortunately you can miss out on birthdays and weddings and births and funerals and all these things. But that's sort of the sacrifice that you do make to work out in the bush. And you know what? It is, for me, it has been incredible. I can't live in the concrete jungle with all the pollution and all the noise, the constant buzz of the traffic, the police sirens, the ambulances, you name it, the hooters, the babies crying. I much prefer hearing the lions roar as I close my eyes and drift off into La La Land. That suits me much better. And of course I think this Egyptian goose thinks exactly that. Isn't that wonderful? Looks like it's balancing on one leg. What are you doing flying from perch to perch? Obviously you can't get comfortable. They've got quite big feet. Their feet are obviously quite large because they're webbed, which allows them to power through the water. When you've got big feet like that, it is also difficult to perch yourself on a tree. They wouldn't really be able to sit on a thin branch. They have to find a thicker branch to perch themselves on. And I think that's what this goose is struggling to do. But I believe that James has got a really good view of some elephants. So why don't we go and have a look?
Well, it's not the best view of some Ellies, everyone, but there's quite a nice little calf in there somewhere. I'm just hoping they will come out into the open. They were heading straight towards us and then they deviated. They decided they needed to go somewhere else. So unfortunately they're not coming towards us anymore. But we'll just sit here patiently and see if they don't come out. Now, we were talking yesterday about colours and the fact that I quite like the different combinations of colours. My favourites being the grey and gold of the winter time, and the way that the animals blend into that, the waterbuck and the kudu. But I also like the elephant's grey and the bright green of the spring. I think it's a really nice colour combination. Don't you, David? Yes. Marvellous. Everything about today has had such a Sunday feel about it, such a peaceful feel about it. Michael, nice one from you about colour. Of course, we were talking about colour, and you say, do elephants see in colour? And why is their eye so small in comparison with the size of their skull? We don't know. I'm not sure if they do see in colour as well as we do. I think they probably see degrees of colour. But because they, of course, have to operate in an area of predators at night, they by default will need to be able to see better than we can at night, and that will immediately mean that their colour vision is slightly reduced. So no, I don't think they see anything like as well as we do colour-wise. But their eye, why is their eye so small? Well, their eye is as big as it needs to be. I don't think that there's any real reason why it should be that much smaller. And I mean, it's an interesting question. Is it that much smaller proportionately? I suppose it is. It's not as small as a rhino's eye, but yes, I guess it probably is quite a lot smaller than, say, an impala's proportionately. I've never actually thought about it. Yeah, I don't know why it would be that much smaller. I guess, you know what? It probably doesn't have to be any bigger. You'll probably find that an eye reaches the point at which, I mean, our eyes are the size that they are, but we can see everything around us as much as we need to see. And I think you'll find that making the lens any bigger would probably be physiologically very expensive and not actually confer much sight advantage. I think that's probably the reason. All right, let's move up here. We're in the far eastern reaches of Djuma now. And move on to the cheetah cat line and see what we can find there. Maybe Kurulski has come back. Well, just before we do that, though, David, do you see on this tree here? Let me just get out of the car. I will show it to you. But I'm very subtly going to do it because I do not wish to be flattened by the elephants. Certainly not while we're live, anyway. see, David? It is a millipede. This millipede, everybody, is sitting on a Strychnos madagascarensis plant, and it's eating the leaves. Now, what's interesting about that is that a millipede is supposed to be a detritus eater. I thought I saw a buffalo over there, but it's a log. It's supposed to be an animal that eats dead and dying plant material. So why it's eating fresh strychnos, I don't know. It could have something to do with the fact that it does have to manufacture poison for its exoskeleton. Oops. I'll put it back. The exoskeleton has got quite a lot of cyanide in it. I'm going to put it back now. This distresses me because what a millipede will do if you pick it up is quite often void its bowels onto you. And that, of course, is very distasteful indeed. There we are. You disgusting thing. But this is not the only thing here. There is this extremely well-hidden caterpillar. Now, David, I'm going to attempt to show it to you. Do you see where my baby finger is?
Yes.
Can you see the caterpillar there?
I just think the one branch clearly.
This one.
Yeah.
You see it? Yeah. How cool is that? Now, everyone, you know, a really impressive lepidopterist might be able to tell you which moth or butterfly that caterpillar is going to become. But I'm afraid I have no idea. But it's very nice subtle colours of sort of light, chalky yellow, bit of blue, and an orange head. Very pretty. Very nice. Good. Life all over the place in the springtime. Now, Theodore, you were wondering about... What was Theodore wondering about? Oh yes, elephants and their space. Theodore, you were wondering about elephants, how much space they have to roam, and is it as much as it was years ago? Sorry, I'm just plugging myself in. There we go. Recharge my batteries there. That's what I'm doing. Theodore, they have 8.5 million acres. The elephants can roam throughout the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. So that's Gonera Zoo in Zimbabwe. It's the Limpopo National Park in Mozambique and the Kruger National Park in South Africa. So it's 8.5 million acres. Is it as much as they've always had? No, absolutely not. There are 6 million people living on the borders, or 4 million people living on the borders of the Kruger National Park. So that's a vast number of people, and the elephants used to, as along did many other animals, we think, they used to move into the Drakensberg Mountains through the areas where the people now live, and they do that for the dry season, so the winter, and then come back down here for the summer. There's some more elephants on our right hand side, but they obviously can't do that anymore. And I think that's profoundly changed the way this landscape has looked, or does look now. Another very peaceful breeding herd of elephants. Just gently feeding on their summer breakfast, Sunday breakfast, which is the same as their Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday breakfast. David, there is a great agglomeration of predatory birds circling in the greying sky. It's quite ominous. What they've found, everyone, of course, is not ominous at all. They've found a thermal. And so they're all flying on the thermal, gaining some height so that they can see some hapless thing that's died either during the night or yesterday, and then they will go and eat it as it rots quietly in the 37-degree heat that will ensue once this cloud burns off. Good, on we go. There's a kudu up ahead, there's some impala up ahead. Patrick, I'm afraid your comment on why elephants' eyes are like they are has mystified me to the point of me wanting to sort of lie underneath the car and have a break. I'm going to ask Louise to read it out to me again. In fact, I'm not. What I'm going to do, everybody, is I'm going to turn Louise on live, everybody. This is what Louise sounds like. Louise, please read that out again.
Comment from Patrick.
There we go.
The degree of symmetry is non-responsive to the brain and therefore lead a straight parallel vision and hence leaves behind depth but not height. Patrick?
I don't understand. Patrick, I will try and decipher that when we get home, I'm afraid. The degree of symmetry is non-responsive to the brain. Patrick, thank you for that very much. I will have a look at it when I get home, but I'm afraid I am utterly mystified as to how to make sense of it. Louise sounded like she knew exactly what was going on, so I'll get her to explain it when I get home. Sorry, Patrick. Oh, we've got Kudu frolicking about here. There's some zebra in the background. There are some orioles calling. There are some buffalo eating grass around here. It is just a magnificent day. Let's go a little bit further forward. I'll show you the beefies and the zebra. The degree of symmetry is non-responsive to the brain. I'm lost from there. Negative, Louise, you are now on closed comms. Louise, I'm afraid everybody has confessed also to being mystified by Patrick's answer. There we have the kudu being very confiding, unlike most kudu who normally run away. Gorgeous antelope. And yesterday there was a post from Nkoro that someone had interpreted as a hybrid between a kudu and a nyala. And Byron very cleverly and correctly pointed out that it is not uncommon for a nyala bull to not go that charcoal color. So they maintain the sort of female coloration, but they have horns, and that's led to the confusion. And I thought that was a really nice discussion that Byron had yesterday. Now, in front of us, David, we have got the beefies and their friends, the zebra. You see, they are friends, David. They are not crossed with each other. Long may that situation persist. And what I think is interesting, I'm going to sneak further forward. Let's see if these buffalo have managed to find some grass of sufficient length that they can actually eat it. Remember, yesterday and the day before that, I made note of the fact that the buffalo are doing a lot of browsing, and I think that's a function of the fact that the grass is too short for them to eat. And they are in a very, very bad way, and they've continued to lose condition after the rain. Whereas if we look at she's quite heavily pregnant too. A very heavy belly, but unfortunately her hips are sticking out, so that calf inside there probably struggling. But the zebra, who we'll go and take a look at now, they just look like they've got on with things just fine. There's a browsing buffalo right next to us, David. It's eating Cissus cornifolia, or mbezana, the bushman's brake. Right, we're going to put Louise back onto open comms now, and I'm going to get her to say, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain, and then Jason, I'll answer your question. Go for it, Louise.
The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. This is ridiculous.
Jason, you say... Is Louise an app or a real person? I'm assuming you mean, Jason, like Siri on an iPhone. Is Louise like Siri? Jason, Louise is not like Siri. Louise is a genuine human being. That is wonderful. Thank you, Jason. I'm going to refer to Louise, and so will everyone else in the camp, as an app from this day forth. Our resident app, Louise Pavid. I suppose, to a little bit of an extent, the radio does kind of disembody the sound. Now, quickly, Dave, if you don't mind, quickly. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's gone off. It was a false tiger moth that's flown off down the other side. Taylor's got some elephants of her own. Let's go and find out if they think Louise is also an app.
I'm trying to think if I need something to say now, but I can't. But look at this beautiful little elephant, though. It is very cute, and it is quite curious as to what we are. So we're just sitting very quietly because as we sit here, it's getting braver and braver and coming closer and closer to the vehicle, which is quite funny. And it's very cheeky because every now and then it lets off a little head shake, this young man. Let's see, look there, he doesn't know what to do with his trunk. He's just swinging it around, hoping that it will go in the right direction. But off he goes. Okay, well, let's go forward again. There's an entire herd of elephants moving around here. But as you know, the elephants move quite quietly. But let's see if we can get one last look. It's okay, big girl. Now, Mom doesn't seem too impressed with us, or that one behind us, as you heard that trumpet. But of course the little ones don't mind. They just continue playing and having a great old time because they know they've got Mom and, well, all the other aunts and grandmothers and sisters and whoever is around here to protect them. They're very happily just feeding on this lovely cool morning. And we're slowly making our way towards Hyena Road to have a look and see what's happening in that magpie shrike nest. Now, I did pop past there yesterday because we found a buffalo on Hyena Road, and I had a quick look and I didn't see anything inside. But we shall check again. Look at how she's reaching to the tops of those leaves and now trying to break the stem. There we go. She got the piece that she wanted. She's just popped it in her mouth now. I hope that's delicious. Doesn't look very tasty. I don't know if I'd want to eat it. Now, this elephant cow that we're looking at, she's got two youngsters at her side. She's got that really little one, and he's probably just shy of about 6 months old. And then she had an older calf too. I didn't see if it was a male or female. And now, David, you're wondering, at what age do the little elephants start to get tusks? So I think they start out as growing at the first couple of months, but we can't see them because they're still hidden in the folds of skin. But when they get to about 2 years old, you can just see the tips of the tusks sort of protruding and sticking out slightly. And that's a really good way to try and gauge the age of an elephant. But remember, it's all got to do with genetics. So some elephants may grow their tusks a little bit quicker than others. Some may grow bigger in body size quicker than others. So you use a combination of things to age an elephant. You use their trunk. It takes them about a year to get a sort of firm grip on how to control that thing. And then, of course, the size of them in relation to the other elephants, and then of course the tusks. And if you use those three things, you should be able to get an accurate idea on how old an elephant actually is. And it's a pity that there isn't very much grass to eat. Actually, I want to show you. Look at all this lovely long grass that's growing underneath this buffalo thorn. It's a dead buffalo thorn. You see that? Look at all those lovely blades of grass. Now I'm surprised the elephants actually haven't fed here and picked up these broken branches and moved them out of the way. Because typically that's what we see. Because that would make for a really good meal, and that grass is so full of nutrients at the moment. But they are quite spoiled for food with all the trees getting their leaves back on them. So there is a variety of different things to eat. But we've definitely seen a decrease in the elephants pushing over trees and stripping the bark from the trees. They seem to just mainly be browsing at the moment. Hello, beautiful. And this is sort of an animal you can just sit and watch and enjoy and not even need to say anything. Looks as though she's being very particular about what she's trying to find to eat next. Oh no, what are you doing now? Very difficult. It's very much an obscured view, as you can see, with all the trees surrounding her. And I'm very happy that I've been able to see a couple of elephants today, especially that little one. That one really did make my day. But I think what we're going to do now is these elephants are moving further into the thicket. We're not far from Hyena Road. Let's go check that nest out and see if it is still active. I hope it is. And I'm sure we'll see a couple more elephants along the way. Now, something that we've actually been chatting over the last 2 months that I've been here is talking about not seeing a lot of bird activity on the elephants. And I know James was wondering exactly that. Why do the elephants tolerate cattle egrets sitting on their backs, but they don't tolerate the oxpeckers? Now, the reason why I don't think we see many oxpeckers on the elephants is because they don't have a very hairy coat like the buffalo, impala, kudu, and the rest of the herbivores have. So we see a lot of the red-billed oxpeckers, and this morning we were chatting about the differences between the yellow and the red-billed. Remember, the red-billed use that scissoring motion to go through the coat of hair to pick out the fine parasites. Now, they're unable to do that on an elephant because they've only got hard bristles that cover their body, and not lots of it. They're sort of sparsely separated, and I think that's why we don't see them. And then, of course, the cattle egrets, they're not feeding on the elephants, they're sort of just using them to catch a ride, and particularly through swampy areas. Now, we're at the nest. Brian, will you let me know when you've got a good gap? Is that good? I'm going to just switch off over here. Here's the nest. Now, straight away, this nest looks a lot more untidy than what it did almost a week ago. It seems as though something has maybe disturbed this nest, and I don't see any of the magpie shrikes around. And those 3 little chicks that were inside that nest, they should be quite large to the point that we would be able to see their heads popping out from the top of the nest. Now, I don't see anything inside there at all. So I'm wondering if perhaps maybe they fledged, but I think it would be a little bit too early because the last time we saw them, they were still naked. They didn't look like they had any feathers on their heads just yet, and their eyes seemed to be closed too. So I wonder if, unfortunately, something like a snake or maybe another bird came through here and snatched those chicks out of the nest. I think that's what happened. What did it, though? I'm uncertain, which is unfortunate for Mr. and Mrs. Magpie Shrike, but hopefully they get an opportunity to lay some more eggs. But let's go back across to James, who I believe has got the fastest creature in the world.
I am with a Speaks Hinged Tortoise here, everybody. And I'm not going to pick it up. I just wanted to arrest its motion slightly so that you could see it. Hello? What's your name? You're not an app, are you? And he's just come out of a termite mound, I think, as a result of the rains that we've had. And he's now going to go and try and find a snail to eat. That's what they like to eat. They like a little bit of escargot. He now thinks he's hiding from me to me. Now the reason we don't pick them up, of course, is because they tend to avoid their bowels, which of course dehydrate them. He's now climbing underneath my under my chest. All right, little fella, off you go. How cool was that? Shame. But he was going quite fast. You know, a tortoise is not a slow animal. As we all know, the tortoise beat the hare. And so I thought I'd better get out of the car to stop it escaping from us. There we are. It's now starting to warm up quite nicely. Unfortunately, this very pleasant warm temperature will turn into an incinerator temperature very soon. David and I were just commenting on how wonderful it is to have the cloud, but how sad it is that it isn't going to remain. It's not that sad. I mean, look, there are sadder things in the world than that. Now, we're approaching the Mati drainage, and there was some indication that there could have been Karula activity around here. Sorry, MSO channel, I missed you. The Game Drive channel was waffling away.
UFO channel.
UFO channel. What about it?
He said that tortoise is funny.
Oh, it's funny. Great, thank you. I think it was quite funny too. I'm confused. A UFO channel is the name. And he said that he thought the turtle was funny. Good. Right, got it. Thank you, UFO channel. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the confusion. My app in my head. The Louise app is not functioning properly. I can't hear it. That's too funny. You say the turtle was funny, yes. Well, look, they're not champions of comedy, I don't feel, but they're not turtles at all. Just remember that tortoises, similar to turtles, but turtles live in the sea, and so we'd call that a tortoise. And we have terrapins as well, and they live in fresh water. I've never heard of anybody describe the Speaks Hinged Tortoise as funny before, but you know, we all have our own senses of humour. Thank you, UFO channel. We have another one coming through. Please give that to me again, Louise. The app is really malfunctioning at this stage. Right, KJ Love, I think you have an autocorrect problem. You say, do torches swim? No. Now I could categorically say that this cannot swim. KJ Love, I'm assuming you're dealing with an autocorrect issue. Their tortoises don't swim, no. They can go into water. I've certainly seen them almost completely submerged, but they can't breathe underwater and they will sink. Turtles obviously can swim. They can go up and down. Well, terrapins, very good swimmers, very adept swimmers, but I don't think a tortoise strictly can swim, no. But they can certainly be covered in water and then they'll crawl out of the water again. Thank you, KJ Love, for that. But tortoises, no, categorically I'm going to say unable to swim. We'll have to update our app from Louise 101 to version 2. Here's an elephant that looks like it's going to try and push over a very large marula tree, but I don't think it will because I don't think it's big enough. Oh, that's a lovely, look at the colour there. That's gorgeous, David, it's gorgeous. There's another one just to the left-hand side that thinks we haven't seen it. Just over there. Oh, it's great when there's so many elephants around. I was just saying to Dave earlier that, you know, after I last saw you, we had the buffalo sighting, and then Taylor had her sighting, and we drove past a couple of waterbuck and some impala and one or two wildebeest in the distance. Come February, we will not drive past anything. We will stop and look at it because you just don't have the abundance that we have now. There are animals absolutely everywhere, and the same thing goes for elephants. When they're around, it's fantastic, but remember, we can go for weeks sometimes without seeing elephants. Then we do a lot of talking about trees and flowers and computer apps like Louise 2.0. Now, all the way from British Columbia in Canada, Adrian, we were chatting a little bit earlier about the lion's chances of making it to adulthood, and you said the elephant calves make it all the way to adulthood normally. Adrian, I'm going to say probably about 80% of them get to adulthood, yes, because they do not suffer from predation. But remember also that the elephants obviously produce far fewer youngsters than the predators do. But yeah, I would say about 80% of them. So quite a few. You very seldom see dead elephant calves. You definitely don't see them being caught in this area by predators very often. It does happen up in Botswana, especially when the rest of the herd becomes so exhausted by drought that they're unable to protect the youngsters. Then it can happen. But it really isn't common at all. Very, very peaceful and calm again. And also, much like the buffalo, these guys will like to eat grass if they can, but there just ain't enough of it around just yet. The reason we're seeing so many animals at the moment, of course, as I think I've said, is that the rain here is so concentrated that, you can have areas in the same reserve that still resemble the Gobi Desert, which parts of the south of the Sabi Sand do. Whereas up here we've had a decent amount of rain for this time of the year, and so that's why we have these huge concentrations, 3 or 4 different herds of wildebeest, waterbuck coming out of our ears, lots of elephants today, and little herds of buffalo everywhere, most of them being eaten by the Nkuhuma pride. Now, we were chatting about tongues yesterday, actually, and we had a question about whether or not elephant tongues get bitten by elephants in the same way that you and I might bite our tongues from time to time. And Maureen, you're in Canada, and wondering about whether elephants have pointed tongues like baby rhinos do. I don't know about baby rhinos' tongues. I don't think I've ever seen one, but yes, absolutely, elephants do have tongues that come to a point. They're tapered, There you saw an evidence of it there now. And they're certainly tapered down to the front of the mouth. I don't think they move around nearly as much as ours are able to. Of course, a huge function of our tongues as this cow walks across the road, just giving a little bit of a swagger to show us that she is in charge, of which I was never in any doubt, of course. Hello, ma'am. You know, the main reason we can move our tongues is to talk, as well as to move food around, but it's mainly to talk. Now, if that had been a bull, everybody, he would have stopped, and he would have stopped for probably 2 or 3 times the amount of time that the cow did. The cows do not mess around. They get on with life out here. The little one making a noise, trying to suckle. There we go. I've just had an instruction from the Louise app. We're going to head across to Taylor, who has got a dazzle.
I've got so many different things going on at the moment. There's lots of birds around here, which we're going to try and hopefully get a sight of. But of course, as you can see, those are not birds that we're looking at the moment. Those are indeed zebra. Now we found some interesting patterns on the zebra, sort of on the rump and then on that triangle that they have on their shoulder, well, in this particular individual. And the only way that I can think to describe this pattern is marbling. And now, that's not lion damage or anything like that. That's probably just genetics. And I think that that's quite beautiful. And we saw another youngster that had the same thing. So possibly they're related somewhere along the line. Which one it is, I'm not sure now. But something like that is not very common. Now I must tell you about the interesting bird that I heard. I was hearing this noise that sounded so familiar, but from years ago, and I couldn't quite put my finger on as to who was making that noise. And I thought it popped into my head, and I went cuckoo shrike. So I quickly had a look through all the different cuckoo shrikes, and I played their calls. And it sounds as though there's 1 or 2 black cuckoo shrikes, and I don't know if any of you have ever seen a black cuckoo shrike yet making a noise. Perhaps I'm actually going to play the call for you, because I want you to hear it, and then maybe you'll remember it. So listen very carefully. I'm going to play it right next to my hat. So are you ready? Isn't that incredible? Now, it's a very distinct call. And it sounded like it was in the drainage. And you can see them in lots of different areas. But it seems to be in this one drainage line. We're just sitting off Gowrie cut line with the zebra. So it'll be quite interesting to see if I can actually find it. They enjoy the sort of woodland areas. This is a bit dense, but I suppose there's quite a few acacias, which they're fond of too. That's very interesting, but I'm going to hopefully try and have a closer look around when we finish off with these zebras. And I kept my distance from this dazzle of zebras, and they're very relaxed with us. They're just sort of going about their day, grazing. And in the last couple of weeks, every time I drive either Gowrie Cutline or Vulture's Nest, I always see zebra. They're always around here, and I wonder if it's because there's a bit of grass coming through here, just sort of on these verges before you hit the dense thickets and then down into the drainage lines. You can see that this area is very, very green. And it is proving quite difficult, I think, for them to really feed well, because this grass is very, very short. So this is now where we need another 10 or 20 mils of rain in the next day or two. And it will push that grass through and give it quite a few centimeters. There's also a flock of violet-backed starlings that I can hear maybe they're going to come through at some point too, which will be quite nice. Especially with the light today, because every the time we've had a look at the violet-backed starlings, they almost always seem to be black because we haven't had the greatest sunlight, but I think that they will shine that beautiful violet-purple color. You see that zebra at the back seems to be having a bit of a sleep, not doing too much. Now, speaking about the aqueous creatures, Liz, you were wondering if I've ever done a horseback safari. Sadly, I haven't, and it's something that I'd like to do. I think we were chatting about this a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago. Time flies out here. And I'd love to do one, except I don't want to do one where there's lions. I'm not willing to participate because a lion would look at a horse and see it as a prey species. And I don't know if I'd like to be chased by a lion while on horseback. I would not know what to do. So we'll probably give that a skip. But in an area that's perhaps just got general game, maybe elephants and rhinos and buffalo and giraffe and all that type of thing, that could be quite nice. But I'm not interested in viewing any predators, of course. Yeah, you see that little crested barbet that just very sneakily flew across the screen. But yes, no, so I'm not too keen on doing a horseback safari with any predators. It was something I would have loved to have done, is you can actually do a qualification to the horseback safari. So I wouldn't mind doing that just for fun. And obviously then learn what you're supposed to do when you're on a horse, because it's one thing driving around in the bush. It's another thing walking through the bush. We have different sort of rules and regulations and guidelines that we'll try and follow to try and stay safe. But to be on a horse, I wouldn't know what to do. You see the little common dacre that's just run out. It's just about to disappear. I think that's what that zebra just turned its head to look at. But basically, exactly where Brian's showing, there was a little common dacre that made a dash for it, but then darted down back into the drainage line. And I could just see that zebra looked like it was looking at something, and I think that's what it had spotted. But this is a good spot to be, though. They've got a bit of an open area, of course, to feed. If there's any danger, well, they can dart through some of these bushes. The zebra are quite nimble and agile, and are able to turn quite quickly and move around through this thicker vegetation. Now, Dayton, you're looking at a zebra on the far right, and you're wondering if one of them is pregnant. This one, possibly. It looks, maybe, she doesn't look particularly large, but maybe there's a little one developing. With zebra, it's, right at the back. We'll have to have a look now. We can't see it. I didn't see any that look particularly big. They've all got, see, well, the females seem to have foals here. I can see 2 foals from last season. We'll have to have a look. But the gestation period is about a year, almost exactly a year. And they typically will have them in the summer months. Like I said, I've already seen the first foal of the season. I think I see her head coming out slowly. We'll just have to wait for her to pop out. I don't want to drive up towards them just because they're having such a great time and they're not bothered by us. I don't want to disturb them this morning. There we go. There's the head. Think, Dayton, that the zebra that you're talking about. We'll just wait until it pops out a little bit further. As you can see, this is Africa time here. Nothing rushes any of the animals. No, we need to move out the way. There we go. Now we can have a good look. So I think it's that zebra that's in between the ones in the middle. Yes, Dayton, well spotted. This female is definitely pregnant. You can see how she's clearly bulging and how round her belly is. So I'm sure it won't be too long. And it's actually quite easy to get an idea when a zebra or a horse or even a donkey is going to foal. And if you can get a good look at their mammary glands, of course, like we see with the lions, their mammary glands will start to swell. But if you see the waxy secretion coming from the udder, then you know that you're probably within a week and of sort of that female giving birth, which is quite exciting. It's obviously quite difficult because you can't get underneath the zebra. But I remember from horses is that we at one point stayed on a stud farm where they were breeding thoroughbreds, and often we would help with the foaling process. And then that's how I learned that you can tell how when a horse is going to give birth, and it'll be very much the same with the zebra as well as donkeys. Thank you very much, Zebra. That was very pleasant of you. But I want to go back around the corner, though. Who's flying there? Oh, Battalier. Now, Adelaine, when we were looking at those zebra, you noticed how they were twitching their skin, and you're very much right in saying that it is because of the flies. It's not anything else, so you always have to trust your gut. So well done there. And that's another defense mechanism. Fortunately, their tails aren't long enough to swish the flies around their shoulders or around their neck. So they will often sort of twitch the muscles, and then that moves that part, or that area. And of course, the flies won't sit on you for too much longer. They will fly away. But what I do want to do is I want to go back to where I thought I heard that cuckoo shrike. Because it's one thing hearing a call. Maybe there's something else that sounds similar to that, but to me it's a very distinct call, and it brought back fond memories of the Eastern Cape. But let's go back to where I thought I heard it and see if we can have a little look around. Now, I don't know if you've even ever seen a black cuckoo shrike before, so I'll have to show you a photo. But they're beautiful birds. Let's open it. I'm going to go to a real photo very quickly. Let's find a good one. Here we go. Let me turn it sideways. Can you see that? So you can see it's black, as the name suggests, but it's got that beautiful yellow spot on the wing. Now, that is the male. The female is very different. We'll scroll. Let's see if we get a good one of the female. Look at her. Look how beautiful she is. Isn't that incredible? The beautiful, looks like she's got scales on her chest. And, of course, that black and yellow barring on her wings. They're quite beautiful. And then that very, very typical, I can't do that call very well, but that. Let's go a little bit closer and have a look. And something is also unfortunately passed on around here. Most likely something like a buffalo, just because we've been seeing them sort of weakened the most. I think it's probably died somewhere in here, because it's also a very, very foul smell at the moment. So I was actually just coming through this area over here. I'm just listening to see if I can quickly hear that call again. The only one I can hear now, it sounds like a Sterling's wren warbler. But that's quite far away. And this sounded a little bit different, not quite as sort of high-pitched and metallic like you hear the Sterling's wren warbler. But we'll keep investigating. Like I said, there's a possibility that I could be wrong. Oh no! Is it that time already? I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to say goodbye to you. But it's been an absolutely wonderful morning, and I'm so glad after putting in all that hard work, we managed to find Tingana, and I hope you got some great screenshots. But we'll probably see you again this afternoon on the Sunset Safari. So from myself, Brian, and of course the very smart looking Thumb, we'll see you a little bit later. But let's go back across to James and say goodbye to him as well.
Goodbye. I'm just being wooed, everybody. We have a giraffe there that is coming, not that way, David, the other side. It's a tall thing. See that big thing there? It's behind this bush, but it was hoping it would come into frame. There it is. What a brilliant shot of a giraffe. That's That's fantastic. Let me go forward. It was threatening to come into this opening. I wasn't just being a complete buffoon. Semi-buffoon, yes. There it is. And what it's looking at, of course, David, is elephants. It's looking at some elephants behind it. Very fine example of giraffe hood, this. A dark specimen. And much like that poor old zebra that Taylor saw earlier, he's had his tail chewed off, probably by ticks, maybe by lions. I'll move back a little. Don't run from us. He's doing his exercises like David and I are going to be doing, isn't he, David? Can you run like that, David?
Yeah.
Can you? I can't. That is really quite impressive. We should chase them more often. That slow motion leap, galloping, very, very unstable, especially if they are in thick bush. Now he's hiding behind a tree. He thinks he's completely invisible now. Right, let's have a quick look the other side before we have to leave you. Where there are some zebras. Right, FJ, funky jazz fingers. FJF, you're back. You say, do we have the chance to live in a safari compound? Is that the question? Yes, indeed. We do live in a safari compound of sorts. We live in a camp, jazz fingers, which I suppose could easily be described as a compound. We all have our own rooms, which is very nice, except Jamie and Brent. They don't get to have. They share a room, but that's because they are quite friendly with each other. But we live just down here. Our compound is just over there, and I don't know why I find the word compound so amusing. It gives the impression of some kind of army barracks, which it isn't. It's a very pleasant little camp under the shade of some marula and buffalo thorn trees. It's really pleasant indeed, and that's where we're going to go and have our breakfast now. Thank you everybody for joining us on our safari. Thank you, David, for your efforts. Well done. Thank you especially to our favorite app, Louise, in the final control, ably assisted by her programmer Kirsten McLennan Smith. But mostly to all of you, thanks for coming on Drive with us today on this wonderful Sunday. We'll see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.